Aaron Peters. Scientology has its own idiosyncratic video style. In making your own videos, have you learned anything from Scientology videos, or perhaps learned what not to do from them? Similarly, has L. Ron Hubbard influenced your writing style at all? Having spent so much of your life immersed in his writing, I imagine you would be able to imitate his style quite accurately. I'd also be interested to know what authors outside the church have been important to you as a writer. I don't think I've really been influenced too much by Scientology videos. They're pretty over the top. They have a certain style, as you say, and the promotional videos especially are just ridiculous. And even when I was in the church, I thought they were too much, with the pumping music and the, gleeful people that, just ecstatically talking about their wins and gains. It's so over the top, and even in the world of Scientology, they think it's a little bit, much. But it's kind of how David Miscavige wants to present Scientology, and so that's the style and tone of the videos. I've never even thought about Scientology videos as far as how I make my own stuff, except I did think of a parody video I was going to do one time, and I might still do it at some point, to sort of satirize Scientology style videos. But otherwise, no, I'm not really into that style too much. As far as writing, L. Ron Hubbard's not really an influential writer to me, both fiction and nonfiction. The guy just put out so much output, but I don't like his writing style, especially now that I'm more critical of what he's got to say and the whole subject matter. Some of his writings are perfectly fine. Some of his issues, some of his bulletins, maybe internal church issues, are some of them are fairly sensible. But I'm talking about writing style now. I'm not talking about the actual content necessarily. When I say some of them are fairly sensible, I mean the way it's written is clear, easy to understand. You read it, you know what to do, and you can go do it, right? But many of his policies are very ambiguous, and even contradictory one to the next. And that makes it very difficult to be able to confidently follow his orders and directions. And his book writing, I have found to be atrocious. I mean, really, really bad. Many of his books, in fact, I think almost all of his books were transcribed. He dictated them, except for Dianetics and maybe one or two other books. And Dianetics, of course, is a horribly written book. It's awful. The prose is just awful, and very, very unclear. He repeats himself throughout. And he's not clear in what he's in his claims. He's not clear in what he's saying. I mean, some of his claims are very bold, very clearly stated. Others are very wishy-washy and equivocal, very non-specific. So you can read a lot into some of his statements, and of course Scientologists do. So not very scientific writing, not very well clearly defined writing. And so very, very open to many different interpretations in some cases. And this causes all kinds of trouble with Scientologists, of course. So no, I don't think that I want to have L. Ron Hubbard influencing my own writing. I've sort of developed my own style, I guess, as I've written, my book and my blog articles and, of course, all my videos. I tend to, my sentences tend to be too long. I tend to have some run-on sentences that I try to work on. That's always been the case for me. Influential writers that I have enjoyed and have modeled some of my fiction writing after. I've done some fiction writing in the past. I hope to maybe do it again in the future. And I was very influenced by Steinbeck and by Hemingway. Very much so. I got turned on to Steinbeck because he's such a simple writer, very powerful writer, because his statements are so clear and concise. And that was recommended to me for my run-on sentences when I was young, and that's always stuck with me. I loved Stephen King as a writer. I just did. I just loved his fiction, especially his early stuff, 70s and 80s stuff. Some of that's just, really classic horror to me, or dark fantasy. And I read a lot of Dean Koontz also. There was an author named Robert McCammon that I really liked, who was very, I'm not going to say copycatted Stephen King, but because he wrote some really good stuff all on his own. But he was also an influential writer for me in the 80s. And those are, yeah, and then of course nonfiction wise, I think the writer who's more recently had the most influence on me and who I have modeled my work after was Carl Sagan. And especially having read The Demon Haunted World. That is a fantastic book on, it's almost a manual of critical thinking. And if I could, step up to, his level of reasoning and critical thinking, I'd, if I could get even halfway there, I'd be pretty happy with myself. So those are my writing role models, so to speak.